Well, this is not the show we wanted to be doing today, but here we are. We're talking about a COVID pause as opposed to a potential victory from over the weekend. And we're going to break down everything that this means. Syracuse going into the COVID pause right now. The ACC start of the season right around the corner. Next two games are already axed off the schedule. We'll tell you what it means. Could the winning streak be in jeopardy? The winning season streak. They have never had a losing season under Jim Boeheim. Is that now all of a sudden up in the air? We will discuss all of that and more next.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome in. Thanks for starting your week with us here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Tyler, Aki, Tim Leonard, we thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every single day. We are the only place to get daily Syracuse Orange podcast. Today's episode brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com to learn more. Heavy sighs all around, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the mood right now.
Here we go again, right? I mean, it
just feels like... Yeah, I mean, it feels like March 2020 right now. I don't know if that's how you're feeling as well, but this is kind of the turn we're at right now. I mean, it's not just Syracuse going through this. You're seeing it rip through the NFL with games being moved to Tuesday. You're seeing it rip through the NBA. You saw a number of postponements from over the weekend. You're seeing it rip through all of college basketball right now. I believe as of us recording, there's 32 programs on pause. So I'd imagine that number is only going to grow over the next week or so because it kind of has all become rapid succession. And Syracuse, unfortunately, one of those 32 programs had to axe their games against Lehigh and Cornell. And now we're going to be sitting with just 4 home games in the ACC, a 5-5 record, or 4 home games rather in the non-conference, a 5-5 record in the non-conference. It's just not where you thought you were going to be after 10 games because you didn't think you were going to have 10 games in the non-conference.
No, and I'm not going to say I thought we were past this. It just optimistically, I was viewing this season as maybe we would get through it without any of these, or definitely to this degree. I don't think anyone saw this coming. It's maybe not like totally a March 2020 feel for me, but that's probably because my guard's up a little bit more now. And it's just now it's a feeling of, gosh, here we go again. I'm tired of having to deal with this in sports and having to deal with this and the stuff we love. And obviously hope that we get through this as soon as possible. But like you said, I don't know if this is going to be just a couple weeks here over Christmas. It feels like this is probably going to be a factor the rest of the season, which is disappointing. But as a team, if you're Syracuse, you just do the best you can.
So according to Mike Waters, handful of players testing positive for COVID-19. And it's one of those things where we saw this last year. Syracuse went into the pause, kind of struggled a little bit out of the pause. They lost 3 of their next 4 games. And what it all means for Syracuse. So obviously you thought, okay, even the most pessimistic of Syracuse fans thought, okay, you were going to win these next 2 games, right? And now all of a sudden those are out the window. And listen, the games against Lehigh and Cornell were not going to determine Syracuse's tournament fate in terms of them getting in. If they lost one of them, you could pretty much kiss the whole season goodbye. But them not having these games isn't necessarily going to make or break their tournament hopes. If anything, it may be a good thing in the long run that they're not getting these games in because they may schedule some games down the road that may be a little more meaningful in terms of a resume aspect come March.
Yeah, I do think it's tough timing, though, because this is a point in the season where you're still growing. You're still trying to figure out what you are as a basketball team. And you finally got some practice time, and then boom, you hit the pause button. And now you have to kind of start from scratch and go into this Georgia Tech game. Hopefully that's your next game on the calendar here, slated for next Wednesday, the 28th. Or maybe it's the 29th. I think I might be slightly off on that. I'll double check. But either way, it's coming up. 29th Wednesday. That is now a tougher task, in my opinion. And yes, winning against Cornell and Lehigh would not have done much for you. but getting more game experience with this relatively new group to the zone, getting Benny Williams, who we talked about so much last week, as this is his time to maybe come through. And the reason why we talked about him a lot last week is because it felt like if Benny's going to do it, this is his window to do it in. And if you don't do it now, you're in jeopardy of maybe not having a true window. And now I'm worried that that might come true because now it's just jumping right into ACC play.
Now, it's not the toughest of ACC opponents out of the gate, which I guess is one of the nice things for Syracuse and for Benny Williams in particular, if he wants to get going. But yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. Like from a basketball standpoint and an improvement standpoint, not a good thing. This team needs as much practice time as possible right now. They need as much game time as possible. But from a resume standpoint, you might have a chance to add some games down the line that will ultimately impact your resume in a more positive light than what a Lehigh or a Cornell could have done for you in this upcoming game, in this upcoming sequence that was supposed to happen that obviously is no longer happening. But we saw it last year. Like this team went into the pause after that Buffalo game, lost 3 of 4. You saw some guys really struggle. I mean, you lost to a bad Pitt team twice. One time you had them completely on the ropes and choked it away. And it was just a fatigue fact. You saw these guys just looked out of shape. And you saw it really. This wasn't just a Syracuse thing. A lot of teams coming out of the pause, sure, they maybe won some games, but they weren't winning games the way that they were used to winning games. Like I think about a Michigan or a Baylor. Like they went into pause and then they came out of the pause and sure, they were eking out wins, but they were eking out wins against teams that they were probably thinking they would blow out by 20, 25 points.
Right. And also throw in Bryant to that conversation as sort of an example of what a pause can do to you, because people forget, but that was the opener. And that was a game that they almost went to overtime or really had to come back and gut out a performance. And Joe Girard looked really rusty and it got him a little mentally off for the rest of the season, perhaps. It's a shooting team, and so much of what you need to be successful shooting wise is just practice time and reps, and that really cost 2 of our better shooters last year and Buddy during the season. Then when he finally got healthy and finally got the practice time, he became the Buddy that we were sort of expecting, and even probably better than that when we went on that NCAA tournament run. But I'm a little worried. I do think like there's no good time to have a COVID pause. So is this better than having it in the middle of ACC play? Maybe, but it's still not a good time because these were games that we circled as really important get right opportunities. Get back to the dome, do things, get Benny going, get Symir going, whatever it is, just sort of build your way into the conference play, because you can't lose games to Georgia Tech now in conference action. Like your margin of error is really thin. And now that margin of error is really thin for them coming off of limited practice time and not the full non-conference schedule and not the opportunity to kind of get right in those dome games against some weaker competition.
Right. I mean, if there was an optimal time to have a COVID pause, it was whenever that Colgate game was. You're kind of wishing that maybe you had it then.
Right.
So, all right, we will get into, will Syracuse add more games? Is there a window of opportunity for them to get in a few extra games now that these two are off the schedule? But first, let me tell you about PrizePicks, because we've been telling you about them for quite a while now, and you've got bowl games to get in on all this action with. So if you haven't signed up, what are you waiting for? In addition to the college football action, PrizePicks makes college basketball that much more exciting as well. It's daily fantasy made easy. They are the leader in college sports daily fantasy, with more props in college football and basketball than anyone in the world, with all the star players of the Power Five, as well as mid-major players that you probably haven't even heard of yet. So PrizePicks will give you anything that you can think of prop-wise in terms of basketball. You can play points, rebounds, assists, threes, pointers made, and more. And any user that deposits and uses the promo code Locked On will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Just be sure to use that promo code Locked On. That's Locked On, all one word. Pick 2 to 5 players with an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus those projected numbers. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out PrizePicks.com. Use the promo code Locked On, or go to your App Store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. By the way, I wanted to tell you guys about the Ultimate College Football Playoff Preview 2021. Local experts, betting advice, and draft analysis. The most comprehensive college football playoff preview begins this Friday. So looking at, will Syracuse add some games here? Again, looking through what we know from last year and kind of how the scheduling went last year, as well as just kind of eyeballing the schedule now, and maybe there's an opportunity here or there. What do you think? Is this going to be a team that is going to be able to add some games?
I don't see it, and I think that's because for me, the teams that you would sort of replace or fill is maybe a Cornell or a Lehigh, that type of team. And I don't like the idea of playing one of those teams in the middle of conference play. There's really no value in doing if it's that late in the season, because at that point you have nothing to gain and everything to lose from a resume standpoint. If you go out and play Cornell in a tight game, that only hurts you. If you go out and beat Cornell or Lehigh in the middle of conference play by 20 or 30, it doesn't really do anything for you. The benefit is that if you played them in December, you could sort of have an opportunity to warm up and get ready for conference play, work on some new things. If you play them in the middle of conference play, a team like that, then you're cutting into valuable practice time. You're cutting into rest time during the week that is really important. And it's just kind of go, go, go from here on out in the ACC schedule. So I don't see a break where they incorporate a game or two.
I see one window, and I think back to last year too, when they added that Clemson game, and I can't remember if they added UNC as well, or if that was already on the schedule.
And
I can't
that's,
remember.
yeah, I think that's sort of like a different, because those are conference games that we're just trying to get as close to that number
Right.
of conference games as possible. When they lost a conference game, then they would add one, and the league handles all that, I think.
Right. And I wonder too if it's going to get to a point where you might add a conference opponent, but play them in a non-conference matchup. I can't remember who, but didn't somebody do that last year in college basketball? I can't remember exactly
Maybe.
who it was, but that's something that certainly is going to be on the table. I think you look for a power conference opponent late in the season. Like, I see this window of opportunity when you play North Carolina on Big Monday. Then you've got Miami on Saturday. If you can sneak in a Wednesday or a Thursday game there, that might work out. You might be able to do something there and maybe get something on the back end as well at the end of the season after Miami. You might be able to get in another game there, because at the end of the day, those games at the end of the season mean that much more. And if you're going to be able to get a power conference opponent, maybe you pull off an upset, maybe you get a big win against somebody notable. And listen, there's going to be teams looking for games. I mean, that's just going to be the theme. It's just going to be like last year. There's going to be teams looking for games left and right throughout the season. You're just going to have to hope to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah, there is one window even earlier than that, I guess, February 12th or February 19th. That's their longest sort of break they have right now, where you're looking at, you got a game on Saturday, then you got no games until the next Saturday. So about a 6-day break. If you want to look at it that way, it's between
That
Virginia
almost feels
Tech.
like a given at this point, that there will be a game slotted in there.
So I just don't see them going out and adding a power conference opponent for some reason. And then I remember, so UNC did this last year where they added
With
Northeastern
Marquette.
kind of in that similar slot. And Roy Williams got a lot of flack for that. And I did agree with the flack at the time. They ended up beating Northeastern kind of no problem, but it was sort of a random mid-February weekday night. And it was just, again, everything to lose, nothing to gain from a resume standpoint. And that was when UNC was sort of flirting with the bubble, and everyone was enraged that he did it. And I'm kind of with them. Like, why would you add a team that is not? And then, so I guess you're saying add a power conference opponent.
Yeah.
But even that is tough, because I just think Syracuse's best opportunity to get to the NCAA tournament from here on out is by really proving they're at the top of the ACC and taking advantage of a weaker ACC and winning as many ACC games as possible, getting the highest seed cut in the tournament and winning some games in the ACC tournament that way, if it all happens and goes according to plan, which we have to say now. But I don't like the idea of throwing in a power conference opponent that might make it tougher to succeed in the ACC.
I just don't see how that makes it necessarily tougher to succeed in the ACC. Like, this team needs games at the end of the day. Like, you need to have opportunities. We've talked about the weak ACC. Like, let's say you can get a middle of the road team in terms of the powers that be in college basketball right now. If you can slot someone in that can be a resume boosting potential opportunity, I just don't see how you can say no to it. And again, there's going to be teams looking for games left and right throughout the course of this season. But again, you've got a couple of windows in there that I think you're going to be able to take advantage of. Why not try to add 2 games? And I think you might be able to boost your resume because ultimately last year, that's kind of what got them in too, is having those wins against Clemson and UNC to close out the season.
Right. And that's a conference example, I guess. I agree with you. I do think, I guess what I'm saying is I just don't see Jim Boeheim signing up to do that in the middle of ACC play because,
Well, I think
yes,
these coaches want the kids to play too.
Right, but they're going to be playing so many. I mean, if it goes according to plan here, these breaks we're laying out are much needed breaks, right? Like every time we get to that point, Jim Boeheim gets on his press conference and is like, thankfully, we've got some time to practice here. We really need a break. It's the middle of ACC play. Finally, we've got 5 days off. We're going to have a big week of practice. Almost the way he was talking after the Georgetown game. So I just don't see him signing up for an extra game when it can kind of hurt you, honestly. But you're right. If they do it, there is some pros to it because you don't have a lot of quad one chances from here on out. You don't have a lot of good resume building chances in the ACC, and you probably have to prove more than you have already in terms of quality wins to this point. So you would want to add some, maybe. I just don't really see Jim Boeheim doing that.
And again, we can lay all this out right now. We could be having a totally different conversation a month from now, even like a week from now. We could be having a totally different conversation just because of the fluid situation that this is right now. I mean, who knows what next week's going to look like? Who knows what a month from now is going to look like? That's the crazy thing that you're dealing with right now. But like, hey, if UConn gets on the phone with you and says, "Hey, let's play on February 16th," I think you have to say yes. I think you do.
Yeah, but then they probably lose, and I don't know why UConn would get on the phone with Syracuse and ask that, right? I don't know. I just
think
don't
these
really see it
coaches want,
happening.
like, I mean, look what happened this past week with Iona and Kentucky and Duke and all these programs. Like, these coaches want kids to play games. Like, that's what they signed up for. They didn't sign up to do all these extra practices. No, they signed up to come and play games because that sells tickets. And that's what ultimately the fans want. And that's what the players want too. They want to play in these games. And I think coaches understand the value of that.
Right, but in that scenario, I think you could pick at Duke a little bit because it seems like they didn't want to take on Iona or they didn't want to take on, like, there were some reports that I think Northwestern and some other teams were like, hey, we'll come down to Cameron and play. And they didn't like the idea of playing a legit team on a short turnaround. So I guess the only way this is possible is if Syracuse literally schedules UConn or Team X or Team Y in early January for a February meeting, because I don't think Jim Boeheim likes the idea of, oh no, we'll just throw in UConn here, a top 25 team, and we'll try and get ready for them really quick. And it might interrupt our flow of the ACC schedule and get us more tired for the next ACC game. But let's throw, like, he's going to have to plan this out way in advance in order for this to work.
Yeah, it could be one of those situations.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, we will get into the winning season streak because that all of a sudden has become a burning topic. Jim Boeheim has never in over 45 years of coaching had a losing season. Could that be in jeopardy? We'll discuss that coming up next. But first, BetOnline has you covered with all season props, odds, lines, and all that good stuff. Better than ever before as football season continues their march into the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. So head on over to their new updated desktop or mobile site today to sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON. That's locked on, all one word, and you will get that 50% welcome bonus on that first deposit. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. They've got futures and stuff like that. If you want to maybe get in on some NCAA tournament potential bets, some Super Bowl bets, all that stuff is available on betonline.ag. The fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet online, where the game starts.
This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Even better than a candy bar, it is a Built Bar filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and also high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. So many flavors you'll have a hard time choosing. Will you have raspberry or mint brownie, cherry or double chocolate, cookies and cream or peanut butter brownie? Tons of good options there on the Built Bar. list of flavors to choose from. You can even dip your Built Bar in a piping hot cup of cocoa, let it melt a little, give your beverage a bit of that Built Bar flavor. Plus, you'll have a nice melty Built Bar to go with it. Be sure to have a couple of napkins on hand if you go that route. And also, maybe try some of the marshmallowy treats, the Built Bar Puffs around the holiday. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. Different flavors, all covered in chocolate. Tastes very good, and you won't believe that they are filled with protein. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, get 15% off your order. Again, that promo code is LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com.
Getting into the winning season streak, we mentioned Jim Boeheim, never a losing season throughout his illustrious career, but all of a sudden, kind of caught our attention because our good old buddy Ken Pomeroy over at KenPom.com, he has
making
the
a lot of
projected
money.
records out. One of Boeheim's favorites for certain, but he has the projected record for the rest of the season at 14-15, which, if you do the math there, that is a losing season. 10-10 in the ACC, so he's projecting Syracuse to go 9-10 the rest of the way. What say you? Is this going to be the one that breaks the illustrious streak that Jim Boeheim is currently clinging on to?
I think it is more in jeopardy now than it has been in past years, and this does not help. I would have felt fine and confident saying that it would be a winning season last week, but losing two pretty much surefire wins on the schedule, combined with the fact that now Georgia Tech might be a little bit tougher of a win coming off a COVID pause, if you buy into that at all, and just the team doesn't have the proper sort of non-conference slate to get ready and grow defensively in time for this softer start to the ACC, makes it a little bit more concerning. I would still say Syracuse has a winning season, though, if you had to make me choose. But it is getting to the point where it's a real thing and it's something to monitor. And when the math is calculating that they will be below 500, it's definitely worth considering, because I do think that's a really cool streak. I know streaks and records and stuff have sort of lost value in sports overall, but that's something that I think is not talked about enough.
Like,
it's an unbelievable streak.
Yeah, you're talking about bringing and build. You are part of a culture of building the program, right? To get it to where it is now. You spent a number of years not even in a conference, and to build it to where it is now and never have a losing season is remarkable. And I feel like that's something that doesn't get talked about enough.
I know. Almost. It's honest. When I bring it up to people that don't follow Syracuse basketball, I always get a look and they're like, wow, like 46, he's never had a losing, like it's a really impressive streak that probably nationally is not talked about enough. I know a lot of the Syracuse fans take pride in it, and it's something that when you talk about the state of the program and things, that's one thing Syracuse has that pretty much no other programs can say. I know UNC has been sort of like this, and they've had a lot of winning seasons, but even they have had years where right after Dean Smith left, they did have a quote unquote losing season. So it's more in jeopardy now, and I would hate for it to be kind of a close call, and then we look back and say, well, the COVID pause and everything, it probably threw them off from actually getting there. The other thing that's in jeopardy is, will Boeheim get to 1,000 wins this year now? Because you need 13 more to get there. Now, you can obviously use an NCAA tournament win, an ACC tournament win or two. If you want it to be in the NIT, maybe, which the more this season sort of heads towards more COVID concern, who knows what the status is of the NIT, if there's even real like motivation to do that at the end of the year. But I would hate for him to win 1,000 the NIT, and I'd really like him to wrap it up in the regular season, but that would require 12 ACC wins in the regular season to get there, or 13 more wins. What am I saying?
13 more wins,
there. So that's a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely a tall task. And again, I'm with you. I think you kind of hit on the head. Like, if I had to take a stab at it right now, I'd probably say they at least go 500, because I do think, like, right now they're projected to go and play an odd number of games. But I do think that obviously the ACC tournament can change the complexion of all of that too as well. But yeah, no, I think that they will go. I think that they will still have the winning season, but this is certainly the diciest it's felt in quite some time. And you don't necessarily, you can't say it with, I shouldn't say 100% certainty, but you've usually been able to say it with 85 to 95% certainty. You're saying it now with like 65% certainty that he'll have a winning season, if that.
And we always get 1 or 2 tweets a year in December on that topic, like, "Oh, it's gonna be the
Yeah.
first losing season," and
then it never
it
is.
always feels premature. It always feels a little overblown, and usually I'm the guy that's cautioning people and saying, "Look, remember what they did last year, Sweet 16 run. They're gonna figure this thing out at least a little bit. They'll start to piece together some wins. The ACC is not that bad or not that good, but this year it does feel like the odds are kind of stacked against them, and it's making it as tough as it has been in a while by losing these 2 close games." You tweeted something out where it's the fewest amount of games non-conference wise, if it holds right now, that they will play at home in the entire program history, right?
Yeah.
So, I
Entire
mean,
program. So they joined a conference in, I believe it was 1979.
okay.
So ever
Yeah.
since 1979, they have never played more than or fewer than 4 conference games or non-conference games at home. It's the fewest in program history.
Right. And honestly, a part of me that's sort of sentimental and believes in like everything happens for a reason type of stuff thinks, maybe this is Boeheim's going to get that 13th win and it's a huge, like that 1,000th win in the ACC tournament. And it ends up being a huge win and it's a big moment and it put him into the NCAA tournament. Maybe that's what we're setting up for, right? That's the optimistic look on this. Because in terms of 1,000, I don't think it means as much knowing that he already passed that benchmark before.
Right.
But I still would not like to see Jim Boeheim wins 1,000th win in the first round of the NIT. Like that would just be almost laughable, right? Like it'd be kind of like his end of his career in a nutshell in terms of
listen,
the
like
controversy around it.
everyone liked to run with the storyline of, oh, like Jimmy and Buddy and Jim all together, and they're gonna send Jim off into the sunset with a national title. Obviously, the national title is a far cry from what we're expecting this year, but getting him that 1,000th win and it being a big win that means something that maybe gets him into the NCAA tournament, that feels like almost mission accomplished right there. Being able to share that moment with both of your sons on the team.
Right. And then if you don't get it this year, it would probably come against Cornell or something early next season because you're probably going to get at least close to it. And I don't know, that would still be cool. And it would hopefully be at the Dome and there would be a sort of a bigger crowd on hand knowing that. But I want that win to mean something at least and there to be a purpose behind it and not just some irrelevant end of season game or early season game.
Right. I'm looking at it right now. Okay, so you're kind of playing roulette if you want it at home at the end because you go home away, home to close the season as it stands right now. One of those home games is against Duke, so that'll be a tough one to maybe pick up 1,000. But yeah, like it would be way cooler if it did happen at home. But it's just going to be, can you get there right now? Because that's kind of what you're grappling with at the moment. All right. That is going to do it for us today on the show. We'll be back tomorrow. Get you maybe some recruiting updates and stuff like that. We were going to preview a game with Drew Carter, our buddy, tomorrow because he was supposed to be on the call. Obviously, the game is no longer happening. So we will reconvene with Drew whenever he is on another Syracuse game because I guarantee you he'll probably get 1 or 2 for the remainder of the season if I had to guess. But we will do that. We will not do that tomorrow on the show. We'll do some recruiting stuff tomorrow and anything else that comes across the wire as well. So for Tim, I'm Tyler. We will talk to you guys tomorrow.